I think I want that hymn sung at my funeral. The grace and peace of the Lord Jesus be with each of you this morning. Christ is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Alleluia. Jesus said in John 10, verse 10, "The thief comes only to steal and kill and destroy. I came that they may have life and have it abundantly." This is a beautiful verse where Jesus, our good shepherd, lays out in simple terms the devil's goal on the one hand, and Jesus' own purpose on the other. If we had any questions about whose work was whose, Jesus gives us a bright line. Why does the devil come among us? 3 reasons: stealing, killing, and destroying. So anything to do with robbery, death, or destruction has nothing to do with God. How do I know? Jesus said so. Those things are the devil's work. Then what's God's work? Why did Jesus come? Well, to give people the opposite of death, the opposite of stealing, the opposite of destruction, and that is life to the full. Life in abundance. Now you may be thinking, okay, James, that makes sense enough. Most people I know would prefer to stay as far away as possible from any stealing or killing or destroying. But tell me more about this abundant life stuff. How do we get in on that? Because if you're like me, you may also be thinking that most of the people you know, including many Christians, do not seem to be living and enjoying life to the full. In fact, in my own experience, I find that I tend to live from a mindset of scarcity rather than from a place of abundance. So how about this abundant life? How do we get it? Well, you already know the obvious answer. Jesus brings it. And if you're following him, you already have it. But that's not necessarily very helpful. Because it's like some of my watch collecting friends. They finally acquire that fine Rolex or Cartier or other expensive rare watch. And what do? They lock it away in a safe where it will be protected and not get scratched and hopefully gain in value over the years. And they never wear it. Oh, sometimes they go to the safe and pull it out and admire it and think how cool they are that they own this watch. They might even take pictures of it and talk about it with others and tell them, well, yes, I am a Rolex owner. Would you like to see it? I'll take you to my safe. Some of them even keep it in the safe deposit box at the bank. They enjoy telling people that they are a fine timepiece owner, but being locked away in a dark safe is not the purpose for which that wristwatch was intended. What is a watch for? Telling time on your wrist. Being used as a tool. I think that's how I often treat the abundant life Jesus brings. I've received it as a gift in my baptism. I have it. But as I grew up, I locked it away in my religion safe. When asked about it, I say things like, well, yes, I am justified by grace through faith for Christ's sake. I have abundant life. It's over there in my religion safe. If you like, I can show you a picture of it. Or I can point you to this place in the Bible that talks about it. Is that why Jesus shares his abundant life with us? No. Life is to be lived and enjoyed and experienced and shared. Okay, then how do we do that? Easy enough to talk about, but I think to try and understand how it may be possible to take the abundant life we've been given out of our religion safe and begin to enjoy it as Jesus intended, we can look back at the earlier part of the gospel. In verses 3 and 4 of John 10, Jesus said, "The sheep hear the shepherd's voice, and he calls his own sheep by name and leads them out. When he has brought out all his own, he goes before them, and the sheep follow him." Why? Because they know his voice. Who are the sheep? Raise your hand and say, "Bah." Everyone who has a mother is also a sheep. I'll just put it that way. Who's the shepherd? Say, Jesus. Last year on Good Shepherd Sunday, I observed to you how I find it fascinating that in the Scriptures, Jesus never calls anyone beside himself shepherd. He doesn't call the apostles shepherds. He doesn't call them under-shepherds or even helper shepherds, partner shepherds, or assistant to the regional shepherd. The closest Jesus ever comes is in John 21 when he asks Peter to tend and feed his sheep. Be a servant in the sheep pen, mucking the stalls, baling the hay. But there's only one shepherd. So the apostles and those who come after them, called pastors, they are called to feed and tend, but there's only one shepherd. The pastor's role is a role of service, not of power. So one of the main jobs that pastors have is to bring sheep to Jesus and let him use his power to help them. To teach and model for the sheep how to receive nourishment and care directly from the Good Shepherd. So what do these verses say that the shepherd does for his sheep? He calls us by name and leads us. And then he goes before us, and we follow him. Why do we follow him? Verse 4 tells us, because we recognize the sound of his voice. How do you learn to recognize the sound of someone's voice? Think about it. Most of you, if not all of you in this room, know me pretty well. And yet, if I call you on the phone this week, I'm probably still going to introduce myself and say, "Hi, this is James from Water of Life." And then you'll quickly put two and two together and recognize it's me, and you'll recognize that, oh yeah, that's the voice I heard standing up there and talking on Sunday, and we'll have our conversation. But when your wife or husband or children or mother calls you on the phone, do they say, "Hello, this is so-and-so. How are you today?" No. Our family needs no introduction. We recognize the sound of their voice. They just pick up the phone and say, "Hey, it's me," or "What's going on?" or "What's for dinner tonight?" or "Have you finished scrubbing the floors?" We recognize the sound of our loved ones' voices. Why? Because we know them. We've spent time listening to them and learning about them. So then Jesus says in verse 5, "A stranger they will not follow, but they will flee from him, for they do not know the voice of strangers." What about when a salesperson or someone asking for a donation calls you? "Hello, Mr. Jarrett. My name is blank. Are you satisfied with your cable TV service?" Now, I'm not usually so rude just to hang up on that guy. I'm a pretty nice person. So I say something like, "No, thank you," as my finger is pressing the hang up button. Why do I do that? It's the voice of a stranger, trying to get me to buy something I don't need or give my money for something that's not important to me. "Oh, but if you just listened, it could become important to you." Well, that's the point. Don't call me, I'll call you. And yet, how often do I pay very careful attention to all kinds of other voices of strangers in my life, in this world? And how often do I give little or no attention to Jesus' voice? All the time. Then is it any wonder that I don't always enjoy the abundant life Jesus has come to bring me? I'm not talking about life being all fun and games or just warm fuzzies all the time. That's ridiculous. But I am talking about a basic experience of peace and of joy that comes from being in a conscious friendship with Jesus, walking in the promises of my baptism, living in a realization of God's favor that I've done nothing to earn, that I can only and always receive as a free gift because He loves me. And one of my very favorite lines from Martin Luther, he says, "For thank God today, a child of 7 years old knows what the church is." If you've ever wondered what the church is, here's your answer. Namely, the holy believers and lambs who hear the voice of their shepherd. Beloved, I believe one way to begin to experience and enjoy the abundance of life Jesus brings is to listen to His voice, primarily as He speaks to us in the Scriptures. Not just what He says, but how He says it. Not just the content of His speech, but the sound of His voice. To spend time getting to know it. Its tones and cadences. Its expressions of emotion like joy, pain, enthusiasm, and sorrow. In verse 6 of the Gospel, John records this figure of speech Jesus used with them, but they did not understand what He was saying to them. So I guess it's possible to have Jesus Himself standing right in front of me, and I may not understand the words that are coming out of His mouth. But that's okay. Because Jesus didn't say I would follow Him because I understand Him, or can interpret Him, or can tell other people what He means. Think about Mary at the tomb. She thought Jesus was the gardener. Didn't recognize Him until He said her name, Mary. Jesus said, "I call my sheep by name, and they follow me because they know the sound of my voice." Christ is risen.
He is risen indeed.
Hallelujah.